Okay, we'll call this meeting for policy and priorities to order for September the 3rd, 2019 at 6:33 p.m. I see that we have quorum. I'd like to have the adoption of the agenda. Now that you all had the opportunity to see the agenda, is there any errors or omissions or anything that you'd like to add? Seeing none. Then we have a motion put forward by Ron Kaur that the agenda for September 3rd, 2019, regular meeting of committee be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, after looking at the agenda, does anybody have any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest? Seeing none. Okay, Madam Clerk, there's no interest. Make note. Okay, we'll move right to number 4, old business. The following reports were deferred from July 15th, 2019 meeting of council. 4.1, the development agreement for 1334 Pelham Street, file number DA-01-19, council report 2019-0025, Public Works. We have a motion put forward by Councillor Kaur that the committee receive the Public Works Department report for 1334 Pelham Street, file number DA-01-19, and recommended. That council approve the bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a development agreement with Lawrence Schistla regarding 1334 Pelham Street. Any discussion in regards to this? Councillor Kaur?
Yes, and to the director. On the site, right now, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 2-story building. And if he did get approval, could he go to 3 or 4? Or could he put a second building on the property? And the way it's located, he's going to be on the north end. That's where the house is, and then he has a lot of space on the south end.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, this report is dealing with the development agreement for extending water and sanitary sewer services. The plan that was included is a conceptual plan of how the development might proceed. He has not made any development applications to the town yet. He needs to get a serviced lot. It is an existing lot of record, and what the plan is showing is a 2-story house, and that would conform with the zoning bylaw. The building height in a residential zone is 10.5 meters for maximum building height, which is about 34 feet.
And the reason I ask that, if we approve it and then he builds a larger building, then the residents behind, or residents within that neighborhood will be upset. So, number 2, could he build two dwellings on that property? Could he subdivide that property?
Mr. Chair, through you, the property is zoned for a single detached dwelling. So 2 dwellings would not be permitted. If he were to go through a severance, he would not meet zoning requirements in terms of lot area and lot frontage, so it would, it's unknown whether or not a severance would be approved on that property, but this was an existing lot of record that was created in, I believe, 1964.
Councillor Stewart?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, would he be able to put an accessory dwelling on it that are, being promoted throughout the town?
Mr. Chair, through you, currently right now our zoning does not permit accessory dwelling units in the R1 zone.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, to the director. My first concern is that this development, all the costs related to the town servicing this lot, not surveying, but all the services that the Public Works Department does and the Planning Department, that is totally covered by the developer. And I need to make absolutely sure. That's the first question I have.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The cost for completing all of the work related to the sanitary sewer extension as well as the water main connection, all those costs are the responsibility of the developer. They are not covered by the town.
Councilor Hildebrand?
Through you, through the director as well. This lot has a slope similar to that of Sailor's Hill, which is on Effingham. Not everybody knows what Sailor's Hill's like, but most of us do, and halfway up there's Moore Drive. So the slope there is extreme. I mean, that's the bicycle racing hill everybody rides up and down. And the washout from the water coming from that road, you can see it tears the road and the sides of the roads up. I know at this stage we're not approving that, but there has to be some real serious design concerns when the actual development does come in. And I presume that's in the site approval stage where that occurs. Is that true?
Through you, Mr. Chair, like my colleague said, this is a conceptual plan right now, and this report is strictly dealing with the extension of the sanitary sewer and the connection of the water service, so that this lot becomes a serviced property. With the development applications that come in, then there'll be grading plans that engineering will review and make sure it conforms with our town standards.
Councilor Corr?
And through you, Chair, if we don't approve it, what happens? For the director.
Mr. Chair, through you, this lot is in the urban boundary. It's required to be serviced. Those are the policies in our official plan, so if council does not agree to servicing this lot, then you have an unserviced lot in the urban area boundary, which is contrary to town policy.
Any other questions from any member of council? Councilor Hahn?
Yes, through you, Chair. So as far as any expense to us, the only expense would be, there's a tree, I understand, a tree that has to be removed? Is that accurate? No? Yes?
Again, Mr. Chair, through you, this is a conceptual plan, and it is noting that a tree would be removed, and if it's a street tree on the town property, then that tree would be required to be replaced.
At our expense?
No, at the developer's
At the
expense.
developers, okay, thanks.
Mayor Junkin?
So if I can go back one item to what Councilor Corr is saying, if we don't approve this, the developer would probably take it to the, what used to be called the municipal, it's called
LPAT?
LAP now, and they will just overrule us anyway, right? Is that not I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I mean, other than not having a very good reason to not approve this, the developer would take it to the next step, and that authority would overrule us.
That's the likely scenario, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Is there any other questions from council? No? So I just want some clarity on this before we bring this to vote. So what we are voting on right now is that council approve the bylaw authorizing mayor and clerk to enter into a development agreement. And the development agreement is for sewers and water main. So that, if that's approved, can any construction start at this time? Just want to make sure everybody's aware of what we're voting on here.
Mr. Chair, through you, if the agreement is approved, then construction for the servicing of that lot can commence. The developer is still required to come in and apply for a building permit to build the house. We have not seen that plan. We have nothing. They've made no application to the town. They may sell the lot. We don't know. But there will be construction relating to the extension of the services that would be allowed to commence.
Okay. And this would be a question to the Director of Public Works. Would the hookup be on the west side of Pelham Street or the east side? Or do we have to go through Pelham Road?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the sanitary sewer connection is actually on the west side of Pelham Street, within the limits of the sidewalk, existing sidewalk, so there'd be a sidewalk that would be most likely removed and replaced to accommodate that service connection. The water main would be across a trench that would be taken across Pelham Street to the east side of Pelham.
To the east side. And all that cost would go to the developer, of course.
That's correct. All the costs associated with all the works to extend the sanitary and install the water main and make the connection is at the developer's cost.
Okay. Counselor Hahn?
Through you, Chair, just because the school year has started, I just wondered when you say the sidewalk will be removed, about how long would it be removed before it's replaced? What's the time frame on that about? Because kids use that sidewalk to get to school.
Through you, Mr. Chair, obviously I don't have a schedule, but this is not a huge undertaking. It's 20 meters of sanitary sewer, which would be installed in a better part of a day. And so there may be, by the time you get the concrete removed and get it reinstated, there could be a week or so for that to be out of commission. So we would have the developer submit plans for traffic control. That would also include pedestrian traffic movement, so we would review that prior to them starting.
Any other questions before I call this to a vote? No, seeing none. Then I'm just gonna, that the committee receive the Public Works report for 1334 Pelham Street, file number DA-01-19, and recommended that council approve the bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a development agreement with Lawrence Shistla regarding 1334 Pelham Street. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're gonna move to 4.2. Additional funding request for pavement condition indexing dash 2019-0026 Public Works, 2019-0026 Public Works for September 3rd. That the committee receive report number 2019-0026 Public Works and recommended that council approve the additional funds required to award the contract. Councilor Hildebrand.
For you, to the director. The questions I have is, when was the last study done? And what are the municipal requirements for these type of studies on roads?
Through you, Mr. Chair, a municipal requirement, there isn't really a municipal requirement to have these studies completed. Unlike the bridge and major culvert inspections that we are legislated to do by every second year. So that is something that we are legislated to do, and we must undertake. The pavement condition studies, as a municipality, we're not obligated or legislated to do those studies. But these are very important studies so that we can get a good grasp on the condition of our road network. And this will be instrumental in feeding into our asset management plan that we're developing through corporate services to help us prioritize reconstruction initiatives and resurfacing initiatives, and allows staff to get a better handle on and get the best bang for our buck with respect to our pavement rehabilitation strategies.
Thank you.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes, so again, to the director, so it allows us basically to prioritize the roads that need to be repaired and put them in sequence.
Yes, to you, Mr. Chair. So the study that we're going to undertake will retain a firm, well, the recommendation is in the report to award it to ARA. They will actually travel all of our hard surface roads and do an inspection in accordance with MTO standards, and they come up with an actual rating of that segment of road. So it's called a PCI, or Pavement Condition Index, and it'll be between 40% to 90%. Very rarely you'll have 100% unless it's a brand new road. But they'll rank the roads based on condition. They'll look at the ride quality. They'll look at the pavement distresses. They'll look and see if there's alligator cracking on the road, if there's base failures. And they'll come back with a report that basically ranks the road with respect to its condition. And then as a good strategy, you want to spend rehabilitation dollars and resurfacing dollars on roads that are higher and have a higher PCI that are still able to be repaired using very economical repair strategies such as resurfacing, milling, and paving. When you get down to a PCI of 40, 50, the road is pretty much shot, and it's better then to let that road deteriorate completely and then schedule that for full reconstruction. So that's one of the tools that we would use for this, and we would rank all our road segments and then feed that into our asset management system so that we can kind of look at our whole network as a whole, and then look at the conditions of the roads and prioritize what road segments we do, what rehabilitation strategies we implement. Along with that, there's also, kind of rambling, but this is my thing, underground services. So water mains, sanitary sewers. The worst thing you can do is go in and shave and pave a road, and then 2 years down the road, replace the sanitary sewer or rip out the water main. So you kind of want to look at your pavement condition, and then look at your other assets that you have underground, your water and sanitary, and try to align all those together to make sure that you're doing them at the right time. So that all feeds into this as well. It's part of the study.
Excellent. And before you sit down, I have one more question. So I'm intrigued the fact that we did pair up with Grimsby. Excellent, because that, of course, in this new governance, that is what they want us to do, municipalities banding together on projects, purchases, what have you. Any idea, and I guess it's probably a mute question, but if we hadn't paired up with, no, let me rephrase it another way, any idea of the savings that were achieved by going with Grimsby, or it'd be kind of hard to quantify that, I suppose?
Through Mr. Chair, yeah, I wouldn't be able to quantify what the savings would be. I'm sure that, being partners with the town of Grimsby on this and entering into one RFP, that was tendered through Pelham's procurement process, by the way. There was economies of scale for sure that were realized with respect to having competitive bids on a larger project. So I can't quantify it, but I can say with some certainty that there was probably some advantages to doing that.
Excellent, okay, yep, thank you.
No other questions from any members of council? No? Seeing none, so then this motion was put forward by Councillor Hahn, that the committee received the report 2019-0026, Public Works, and recommended that the council approve the additional funds required to award the contract, and the additional funds was in the amount of $15,628.50, and that the variance of this offset will be offset by the cost savings in other capital projects, according to the report. So is everybody clear on that before I call this to vote? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, there's a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that the committee received report number 2019-0032, Public Works, and recommend that council approve the additional funds required for the costs associated with the sanitary sewer diversion from the wastewater reserve. Is there any discussion in regards to this motion? Councillor Wink.
So through you, Counselor, I was trying to go through all the capital budgets and future capital proposals and didn't really see the Station Street on there. I know that we've talked about it, and maybe you can kind of short circuit me flipping through there, but I think initially we were looking at replacing the storm sewers for the entire Station Street. When was that supposed to be completed?
Mr. Chair, Station Street reconstruction, and I don't have the 20-year capital forecast with me, but I do recall that that was slated to be constructed in 2023. So Station Street, the complete length of Station Street from Port Robinson Road to Highway 20 has been designed. So the design as it sits right now is probably 90% complete. We will have to make some design revisions regarding which way we intend to move forward with respect to the intersection at Station Street and Summersides and Pelham Town Square. The original design contemplated a roundabout, which was brought forward to council, and then it was deferred. The construction of that roundabout was actually supposed to happen this summer, so that was deferred, pushed off, and I believe at that time it was requested that staff take another look at the project to see what other options are available with respect to a safe intersection at that location. Regardless of whether a roundabout's installed or a four-way stops included, the section of work that this report references is the installation of the sanitary sewer. So the improvements to the sanitary sewer was to, it had nothing to do with the storm. So the storm sewer runs north-south on Station Street. This is sanitary sewer, which would take, collect sanitary discharge from Pelham Town Square area, as well as from the areas in College and Emmett Street. And that would divert the flows from, right now they flow down Station Street to Hurricane and enter into the Hurricane pumping station at the region, that the region owns and operates. And that pumping station is the limiting factor in the capacity of our system. So the pumps are undersized, and there's capacity issues with respect to that sanitary sewer heading down through Hurricane Road. Currently, it runs down Hurricane to Rice and then into the trunk. This project installs additional sanitary sewer components that allows us to divert the flows down Summersides directly to Rice Road. So as part of the original project that was awarded to Beam Excavating with respect to the East Fawn Hill work, the roundabout was included in that. And just like I said before, as part of the payment condition study, if we're reconstructing the roundabout and redoing all this work, we had to do the section of storm sewer that was buried, as well as do the sanitary sewer work. So they had the contractor had a PO to do that work. They ordered the materials in advance for the sanitary sewer installation, the manholes. So they're special builds, and so the town owns those manholes. So if you recall, when staff came forward with asking for $400,000 to move forward with the works that we needed to tidy up the East Fawn Hill area, that was part of that, the $15,000 for the purchase of those manholes. And then the idea was that staff would find a place in either the public works yard or there's been obviously there's been some interest from the fire chief to use those as confined space training, but we would store those until such time that we were completing the reconstruction of Station Street, and then we would supply those materials to the contractor to do the work. So that was the plan. When we were at a meeting with the contractor, kind of going through the scope of work for the East Fawn Hill cleanup, they recommended that, you know, we've got the materials, here's the price to install them. It'll relieve a lot of pressure on the system that you have currently until Station Street can be reconstructed, and that's what this report does. It just brought forward the option of installing that sanitary sewer ahead of the Station Street construction because we had the materials now.
So how long would this take to complete?
The sanitary sewer work? My guess is it would take 2 to 3 weeks to complete the work.
Okay.
Beam Excavating, as part of their carry forward work, they do have some work to do in that intersection to improve some radiuses and improve some pedestrian crossings in that area. So we're coordinating that right now with Duffin Contracting as well because they've got to finish their water main. So that work will be happening this fall. Yeah, this report basically brought forward the option to install that sanitary sewer component now. We had the materials, we bought the materials, so now we're gonna store them until we need them. They said, well, maybe here's the price, we can look at putting them in the ground. The advantage of that is that it does take off a lot of pressure on our current sanitary sewer system, specifically with the Hurricane Road pumping station.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilor Hildebrand?
Through you to the director. If I'm right, all these products we're storing are basically concrete, so deterioration is not a problem. So the only issue is the capacity of our sanitary sewer. The issue I have is the finances, obviously, because come the end of the year, we have many obligations we have to meet. And I know a lot of money is coming from the wastewater reserve, but is this, what kind of impact does this have on our financial situation? If the treasurer could answer that question for me.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we talked about this and the financial situation at the end of this year. We're working towards a positive cash balance, and we're comfortable that we would have the funds to support this. The strategy that we're working on right now is to replenish the reserves with the additional cash that we have. As you recall, we received $4 million of a debenture in July. That's to help replenish the cash. That's from projects that were previously, that were finished, and they were approved to be debentured, and we finally got the money now. So we do have the cash to do this project.
Thank you.
Councillor Cora?
To the director, so half the water main is finished on the north end of Station Street. We did the gas lines, right? Gas lines, I know they were in the middle of the summer. The gas lines are finished?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. The water main has been installed from Highway 20 to just south of Summersides. That work is complete. The water main has not been commissioned yet, so the water main is installed, but it's not in service. So the contractor has to come back and commission that water main, and then they'll continue from where they left off, south to Port Robinson Road. And yes, the gas main work is complete with respect to Enbridge's work on site. That's correct.
Any other questions from any members of council? I'll just have the one then for the Director of Finance. If we do go ahead with this approval, are we still on pace for a positive cash balance with this expenditure, this amount?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we are.
Thank you. Okay. Well, then, with no other questions,
Wait, I got one.
yep, sorry, Mr. Mayor Junkin?
Okay, so I just want to make sure that this amount, somewhere along the line, was tendered, right? I mean, we've gone down this road, and quite frankly, be damned if we're going to go through it again, and it's been bothering me a bit. So this guy, this company, he's tendered this work, right? Because I want to know that.
To you, Mr. Chair, this is obviously before my time when this contract was awarded. From my understanding, UCC was retained by the town to be the administrator for the East Fawn Hill Works, and in fact, it was a competitive process that they went through in receiving quotations and pricing for this work.
Yeah.
I got one question for the Director of Finance. How can we be assured of this, that it was the case, that Mayor Junkin was just explaining? I just want to make sure we're not approving something and then,
Through you, Mr. Chair, so once again, that's before my time as well, when these agreements were done, but that is my understanding of what happened. I mean, so,
my question would be to the CAO then, can we defer this until we see the agreement? Can we dig up the agreements?
The short answer is council can make any decision it wishes. I understand there is some, this matter has already been deferred more than a month now. And correct me if I'm wrong, Director of Public Works, but there's some reason to try to do this in fair weather months. That notwithstanding, whatever the answer to that question is notwithstanding, you always have the capacity to defer. But the reality is one corporate entity, with which I'm in no way familiar, has already done the first half of the work, and the idea is this is to do the second half. So although I make no excuses for anything that may have transpired previously, at this point in time, this is the logical entity to do this work here for this purpose, to complete this project. I would simply note that, having no history in the file either. That being said, if it's council's will to defer for us to review more corporate documents, we will do so. Maybe if you might allow the director to speak, I can't speak with the weather and the importance.
you, Mr. Chair. So there are two contracts here. So one is the water main contract, that we have a contractor on board to do that work, and that work is half completed now. They will be coming back on site in the fall to complete the water main work south to Port Robinson Road and completing the second half of the water main installation. So that's completely separate from the sanitary sewer installation. The contractor that was retained to do this, the work at the roundabout and East Vaughan Hill work, Beam Contracting, they had a purchase orders with the town. To the best of my knowledge, that was handled not through Pelham's procurement, it was handled through UCC, hired by the town, and that they contain competitive pricing and bids for that work. The treasurer may want to expand on that some more, but to the best of my knowledge, that's the case here. So it was a competitive process. I do want to state that the sanitary sewer installation, because of the timing, and they had pre-ordered the materials, in discussion with the contractor and trying to work through scheduling and works to be completed, the sanitary sewer, because we had the materials, we thought it was a good idea to bring forward to council to say, we've got the materials, they're going to be in the intersection doing some work anyway. We can get the sanitary sewer installed. It doesn't impact how we move forward with the project, whether it's a roundabout or an intersection. It does relieve pressures that are on our existing system and the region's pumping station. However, we are near capacity, we're not at capacity. We have experienced some flooding issues in the Hurricane Road area. There has been flooding, surcharging of that sanitary system, and there has been damages to hoses in that area. So that's why staff felt it was a good idea to bring it forward to council. To put forward, while we got the materials now, let's not sit on them for 3 years. Let's put them in the ground and get them installed and relieve some of the pressures on the existing system.
Okay. Is there any other questions from any member of council before we bring this to vote? Okay, seeing none, then this is a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that council approve the additional funds required for the costs associated with the sanitary sewer diversion from the wastewater reserve.
Just remember that you are in committee and you're recommending that council, so committee is recommending that council. You still have one remaining.
So that the committee receive report number 2019-0032, Public Works, and recommend that council approve the additional funds required for the costs associated with the sanitary sewer diversion from the wastewater reserve. All those in favor? I'm sorry, I didn't see this side. Opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll move to 4.4. We got a motion put on the floor by Councillor Wink that the committee receives a planning and development report for information as it pertains to file numbers 26T 19-01-2019 and AM-02-19 relating to Martin's Nest draft plan subdivision, and recommended and that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix D, amending the zoning of the subject property from the agricultural A zone to site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1-295 zone, and that council approve the draft plan of the subdivision subject to the conditions attached hereto as Appendix E. Any discussion in regards to this motion? Councillor Court?
Yes, to the director. When we look at the current RM1 zoning, and he's looking at minimum frontage of 5.5 meters or 24 feet, he wants to bring it down to 19.7. And also the exterior sidewalls, he wants to bring that down, and he wants 0 for a common wall. And if I'm not mistaken, when we originally approved that, that was part of it. Now he wants to, he's coming back to us to change that?
Mr. Chair, through you, this property is currently zoned agricultural. You have not approved any zoning on this property. So the request is for a zoning bylaw amendment. The current RM1 zone, they're asking for some variations to that current zone requirements as Councillor Corr laid out, and that's what the request is in the zoning amendment.
So through you, Mr. So they want us to approve agriculture down to RM1 and then amend these 3 items.
That's correct.
Thank you.
As well as draft plan approval of the subdivision for the 6 townhouse units.
Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so with regards to reducing then the size of the front yard, side yard, and, well, those two anyhow, the rationale for doing that is so they can fit an additional unit in, or why do we need to go down from 7.5 meters to 6 for both the front and the side? What's the rationale for doing that?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, the reduction to the side yard will allow for an additional unit. The reduction to the front yard setback does not provide for an additional unit. Reduction to the side yard, you could still potentially get 6 units in there. They would just be narrower units, and therefore, smaller living spaces. Reducing the side yard, it's only on the one exterior side yard that the reduction is down to 3 meters, and so that certainly is more consistent with today's development standards. These development standards in the RM1 zone are circa 1987, and so the reductions that are requested are more common and reflecting more contemporary development standards that developers build to make efficient use of land.
Councillor Hahn.
So further to that, so I believe that as far as the dwellings go, we need to maintain decent sized front yards. If somebody wants to live in a small side yard, that's up to them, but as far as folks driving by and folks have to look at that, I think maintaining an extra 1.5 meters is appropriate. Otherwise, you're gonna have postage size yards, which I don't think is what most of the folks that have moved here want to see. They appreciate the fact that people have some front yards, they can plant trees, and also too, it's green, it's something to look at. Otherwise, folks that have moved from the large cities will wonder why they did so. So that's my take on the front yards. I think that we need to maintain decent front yards. People with backyards, that's up to them. Side yards, that's how they want to live. But front yards, I think, are important.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn. Councillor Hildebrand?
I have another question for the director. Basically, what they're asking for, is that what we're looking at on the lots that we're looking at facing Port Robinson Road right now?
Mr. Chair, through you, the lots facing Port Robinson Road, I believe, have smaller front yards. I think they're at,
Smaller than these are proposed?
yes, I believe they're at 5 meters. This is asking for a 6 meter.
Anybody else want to make any comments or have any questions before we call this to vote? Councillor Wink?
So through you, I agree with Councillor Hahn's comments with respect to the front yard setbacks. I'm okay with everything else that's being presented. Can we make an amendment to what's being presented and say we agree with everything with the exception of the change in front yard, minimum front yard?
Absolutely. If we have a seconder, we can.
Oh, for the seconder. Committee, you don't need a second.
Actually, I was just informed we don't need a seconder, so we're okay. So then we're gonna, is there any discussion on that with Councillor Wink? Councillor Hildebrand?
Yeah. You know, I was surprised. This is just a general comment because some of my friends actually moved into one of the places on Port Robinson Road, and they came from a neighborhood just like mine. It sort of surprised me. It made me take a second look at developments and what people are buying and how they want to live. It's, you know, I personally don't get it from what I see for myself, but I see some of the patterns that are totally different than what I'm used to living in.
You're seeing a variety. Some people want to cut grass, some people don't want to cut grass.
That's exactly what I'm seeing. And I guess people that don't want to cut grass are buying into these different size lots, and people that want to cut grass, I guess they're going to the older places.
That's a comment. Is there any other discussion?
We have an amendment on the floor right now.
So then we're going to vote on the amendment first. So the amendment is that we allow everything as staff reported, other than the 6-meter front yard to keeping it the same at, or from 5 meter to keeping it at 6 meter, correct?
Keeping it at 7.5 rather than 6.
Yes.
Yes, correct. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chair, if I just may comment, what that will do is it pushes the house further back and it reduces the private rear yard amenity area, just so council understands that there is an impact by doing that.
Is there any questions or anybody have any comments in regards to that? No? Seeing none, then we're gonna vote for the amendment first. Okay. So all those in favor of the amendment as Councillor Wink put forward? All those opposed? Carry.
So now you need a vote on the motion as amended.
So now there's a motion on the floor by Councillor Wink that the committee receives a planning and development report for information as it pertains to file numbers 26T 19-01-2019 and AM-02-19 relating to the Martin Ness draft plan of subdivision and recommended, and that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix D, amending the zoning of the subject property from the agricultural zone to the site-specific residential multiple RM1-295 zone, and that council approve the draft plan of the subdivision subject to the conditions attached hereto as Appendix E and as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So now we're going to go to 4.5. Motion on the floor by Councillor Stewart that the committee receives the Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to file number AM-05-19 and SP-05-17 relating to 1440 Pelham Street, and recommended that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix B, amending the zoning of the subject property from the general commercial zone to the site-specific general commercial GC-296 zone, and that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix C, authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan agreement with Colonnade 1440 Inc. on behalf of the town. Any discussions in regarding this motion? Councillor Corr.
Yes, to the director. In your first statement, increase in building height to 4 stories from 3 stories. It's a 2-story building presently now, is it not? And one on one side, 2 on the other. And to say it's 3, or is it already approved for 3?
Mr. Chair, through you, the current bylaw does permit 3 stories.
So
It is currently a 2-story building, but the zoning on it permits 3 stories for commercial buildings.
And through you, Mr. I have a lot of questions about this.
Yep.
So the maximum floor area is 50%, and we're asking them to go to 123? So that's like a new building. Am I safe to say that?
So again, the residential floor area is 50% of the commercial. And so when you're trying to encourage residential, into your downtown, that 50% is really a limiting factor and is restrictive. Most municipalities do away with those kind of limitations on residential development in their downtowns because they're trying to encourage it. So that's a 50% limitation would severely limit the amount of residential development that can happen. So that's why that change is being proposed. The proposal is for floors of residential on the one side, and then a third floor of residential on the other side of the building. The building is between a 1 and a 2-story currently.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so the developer is asking for the 4th floor, and also in addition with the 5th as a elevator to our housing. So it's gonna go up 5, the site will go up to 5.
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, the bylaw does exempt like elevator shafts and penthouses for equipment from the height limitation, so that's not counted as height. The building is a 4-story building, but there is an elevator shaft that, an equipment room that sits at the top on the roof of the building.
So through you, again, Chair, on page 11, you have a breakdown of Schedule B. Can you tell me what the total development charges would be on this project?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm unable to do that. Development charges are payable at building permit, and it will be based on whether or not these are 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units. So we're not at that stage yet in terms of my ability to calculate the development charges.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we wouldn't get any more development charges from the existing building?
Mr. Chair, no, they're not adding commercial floor space to the existing building.
Councillor Wink?
To the director, so with respect to that 5th story, and I understand that you need access to an elevator shaft and whatever, is there any proposal to create a terrace up there for tenants, or is it strictly for access to that elevator shaft?
Mr. Chair, through you, my understanding is it's access for the elevator shaft and so forth. There will be other equipment on the roof, as there typically are, and so it's to access that equipment on the roof. Each unit has its own balcony, so that's how they have their amenity space.
So some buildings will have a terrace up top for a common area to be used in the summer or whatever. How do we assure that that does not happen if we pass this?
Mr. Chair, through you, that's not being provided for in the site plan.
Okay. So one other question that I have for the director, the cantilevered area. I know that the region will not be picking up garbage, but is there sufficient height there for service vehicles and the like to get through that cantilevered area? So I know fire has approved this, so I'm assuming that they have no concern on getting through that, but also just delivery trucks for the businesses such as Butcher and Banker. You don't want the delivery truck to be on the front of the street, like overhanging onto Pelham Street, which is a traffic nightmare as it is. So
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, we've certainly looked at that. Does the height of the cantilevered passageway does accommodate for truck movements?
okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions here from any members of council? Councillor Hahn?
Yes, through you, Chair. So last time we discussed this building, I asked a few questions, and I don't feel that they're really addressed at this point in time, so maybe you can provide clarification for me. That would be great. So it looks like there's about 40 or so parking stalls. Is that correct? And so from my math, if there's going to be 12 units, most people have 2 cars, so that's 24. So it'd take 40 stalls, less your 24 cars. That leaves you 16 stalls. 16 stalls then for a very, very busy restaurant, a foot clinic, and Fawn Hill Fitness. Am I missing anything?
There are 51 parking spots on the site, Mr. Chair.
So the 51, where on the drawing, like, I looked at the drawing, it doesn't show the 50, it says 10, 20, 30, 40.
40, and then there's 10 more across on the bottom, and then there's one accessible parking spot.
So
for
there's a total of 51.
51.
And so the overflow, last time we spoke, was going to be into town parking, the Market Square?
That's certainly an option available. There's on-street parking available on Pelham Street, and then we have a municipal parking lot here next to our building.
The only thing with using a municipal parking lot to offset a parking shortage, it's not fair to taxpayers, first of all. And second of all, if we have events like Summerfest, or we have the market, or any of the other functions that might tie up the lot, then where do people park?
People park on the street, and they do figure it out.
Because there's not that much parking on the street. I mean, there just isn't. There's a handful of stalls. If you get lucky, you might get a stall there, but, okay, thanks.
Mr. Chair, through you, the developer did do submit a kind of parking analysis, and it did do a comparison of parking of, these types of buildings elsewhere and how they function. Certainly in the daytime, when the residents are not in their building and away, there is the ability to have shared parking, and then there will be dedicated spaces for the residents. So the developer is quite confident that the building will function and will perform well. Again, there is on-street parking, and there is other municipal parking close by.
Okay. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, I'd just like to make a general comment. My comment is this: the fact is, I think I've spent some time gone over with the developer and his proposal. I basically like the proposal. If I'm gonna vote for intensification anywhere, I'm gonna vote for intensification in downtown. Because when you go to the major cities, you travel to Europe, you travel all those kind of things, you eventually get the core of the city, they're walking, they're doing all kinds of other things. So that's just my general comment.
Thank you, appreciate it. Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So when the other buildings, and this is to the director, the other buildings that we recently allowed to be built, or the previous council did, which are the brewery has the building, Todd Barber buildings, those two, they're capped at 3, right? Did we tell them they could only go to 3 at that point in time, or what was the rationale for them to be basically 3-story buildings facing Pelham Street, 4 in the back because it's on the hill? Just want to make sure that we're consistent in the information that we're providing people. If we're capping them at 3 and then all of a sudden we go to 4, it has to be fair.
So, Mr. Chair, certainly that's what they applied for, and that's what the zoning allowed. They didn't need an amendment to the zoning bylaw. This applicant is requesting an amendment to the zoning bylaw. There are some policies in our official plan and the urban design guidelines that support this and indicate that at this location, a landmark building is desirable. And so that's the basis under which this proposal has come forward.
Thank you. Councillor Wink.
Just for clarification, is the building beside the hardware store, is that not 4 stories on Pelham Street and the 5th story off of Town Square?
I thought it was 3 facing Pelham and then 4 facing Town Square.
Can you help me with that?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. It's
Okay.
4 from the back, 3 from the front.
So this would significantly alter the appearance of downtown because it's not small town heritage looking anymore. It's a very large 4-story with a 5th with the elevator shaft.
Question there.
Any other questions before we call this to vote? I just want to make sure everybody gets in, asks all the questions and understands what we're voting on. No? Seeing none, then the motion's on the floor by Councillor Stewart that the committee receives this Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to file number AM-05-19 and SP-05-17 relating to 1440 Pelham Street, and recommend that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix B amending the zoning of the subject property from the general commercial, GC zone, to site-specific general commercial, GC-296 zone. And that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix C, authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan agreement with Colonnade 1440 Incorporated on behalf of the town. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay,
So you have to call that it's lost.
yeah, so I call it as lost. Okay, we're gonna move to 4.6.
No. I can't have this.
Okay. The council, or a motion on the floor put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that the committee receive report CPD-030 2019 for information as it pertains to file numbers 26T19-02-18, OP-AM-03-18, and AM-04-18, and recommend that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix D, amending the official plan policies of the subject property, and that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix E, amending the zoning of the subject property, and that council approve the draft plan of subdivision attached hereto as Appendix A, subject to the conditions attached hereto as Appendix F. Any discussion in regards to this motion? Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So similar to, I guess, a couple items ago, I'm going to make the same suggestion. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, and that's the minimum front yards of 6.5, moving down to 4 meters. I prefer at 6.5 for the same rationale I provided earlier. I think it's important people have decent-sized yards, and if you look at what most people are saying, and I'm hearing from my constituents, they are rather miffed, to say the least, to think that we are allowing such roads so close, houses so close to roads, i.e. the corner of Port Robinson and Bryce. I've asked time and time again why that would be allowed. So I need to consider that, and I'd like to at least see some front yards. And I think also for safety at that intersection, it should have been done that way, but that's time's passed. So in this case, instead of going to 4 meters, I'd like to stay at the 6.5 for a minimum from front yards as a motion.
Councillor Wink.
To the director, there's been 2 other Saffron subdivisions. Have we made changes to the minimum front yard setbacks as such?
Mr. Chair, through you, the other subdivisions had similar setbacks and reductions to the zoning standards that is being requested with this one.
Thank you.
Councillor Corr.
Yes, so we're asking to change 28 amendments to this, to the bylaws. Either we have bylaws that are outdated, or the developers are telling us how to run our city with their own bylaws. So 28, it's hard to believe, 28, it's,
Yes, Mr. Chair, our bylaw is outdated. It is a bylaw from 1987, and it does not reflect current contemporary requirements. We cannot, with that bylaw, meet the policies that are in our official plan with respect to densities. The bylaw cannot, standards do not achieve the density guidelines of the growth plan or the regional policy plan. So our zoning bylaw is out of date.
so through you, Chair, to the CAO. And I know you just started here, so it took that long. Like, what's holding this process up? So, you know, you're talking over almost 15, 20 years.
Well, though I can't comment for whole decades, I can tell you that this is the first municipality, even of this size, that I've ever heard of that doesn't have a policy planner on staff. And the reality is, a zoning bylaw is heart and soul. The official plan and the zoning bylaw are usually the purview of a policy planner. The corporation of the town of Pelham employs three people with planning degrees on its staff, and we don't have a dedicated policy planner. And I would imagine that for 27 years now, the planners have been busy with planning applications, and there just isn't a human resource to devote to doing that, barring going to market and having a consultant do so, or looking at changes to the staff complement. But I was quite surprised, and in my preparation and application for this job, I didn't determine and stumble upon the fact that there wasn't a policy planner. I did actually assume there was one. But that certainly explains why it hasn't been repaired. And it's actually like the length of a life sentence. If you killed someone, it would have been, you'd been out in jail by now. We still don't have a new zoning bylaw in that time.
So if we do not approve this, like what the mayor said previously, this developer could go to another level of government and get it approved because
Mr. Chair, through you, if this is not approved by council, the developer certainly does have the right to appeal council's decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. And if that were to be the case and council wanted to attend the hearing and in support of their decision, they would have to hire an outside planner to support council's position, because planning staff have taken the position that this can be supported.
Yeah, Mayor Junkin.
So I sit through here, and it just boggles my mind how people are concerned, know better, they know better than provincial planning policy. They know better than society that is saying we've had enough urban sprawl, we're using up too much farmland, we have got to increase intensification. But no, this council knows better, because forget about the parks that we are spending how many hundreds of thousands of dollars on, that those people in Lookout that have the bigger yards, they still want parks. The number of people that play in their yards as opposed to going and using their park, their common park. It's frustrating as a farmer to see all this land in southern Ontario and everybody says, where the hell is it going? Well, here's where it's going, in subdivisions and more subdivisions and more subdivisions. It blows me away that this council knows better about intensification than provincial policy and the planners from the region and what have you, that all of a sudden, no, Pelham has got to have bigger yards so that in 10, 15 years we can expand our urban boundaries more and eat up more farmland.
We're gonna,
through you, Chair, I just want to tell you, as a counselor, I don't know more than anybody else, but I know what my citizens are asking me to represent them, okay? And that's why I vote the way I vote. 'Cause
It wasn't
people-
a personal attack on you, Mr. Counselor.
When you say,
excuse me, we're gonna get down to, right now, we have, the discussion should be for the amendment on the floor. We're not gonna go back and forth, okay? Councilor Stewart?
Okay, just to follow up with what Councillor Hahn said, what she's suggesting isn't making a change in intensification. It's not changing the lot sizes. It's simply moving the buildings from here to here on the lot so that there is a front yard area that isn't feeling like it's on the street.
Thank you for that. Now, I'm just going to speak on that, so you can move it so your front yard's larger, but a lot of people might like a larger backyard. So those are the things that we have to look at here. It's not what we want, and I agree with Councillor Hildebrandt's comment the first time around. Any more discussion on this?
On the amendment.
On the amendment? Councillor Wink.
So through you, Counselor, when I look at the minimum front yards, they're different between a single, so it's shorter than it is for a semi, which is shorter than a townhouse. I don't understand why the discrepancies are there, so if we tighten it up and have them all the same, you know, at the limit of minimum front yard as singles at 6.5, seems to make a little more sense.
Thank you. No, okay, then we're going to vote on the amendment then. So this motion was put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that the committee.
Counselor Hahn. So you have the motion, you have the amendment by Counselor Hahn that we still have to vote on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I add to this?
yeah.
I just wanted to be clear on this too, because as I'm looking at the titles, so it would be maintaining the minimum front yards in the current RM1 zone and the current R2 zone. Because as Councilor Wink pointed out, there's for semi-detached, and then there's for townhouse, and then block townhouse. So there's 3 different categories.
So maintain the minimal.
So the existing front yard, minimum front yard, for current R2 zone and current RM1 zones.
So I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into that too. So if you look at the zone requirements for block townhouse dwellings, and I'm assuming those are the ones with the rear laneways, there is no maximum front yard, and it's being suggested 5 meters on the street for internal laneways. So
The 16.3?
no, on page 16.4.
Oh, it has a maximum front yard, not a minimum front yard. Right. Oh, yeah, there's a minimum front yard, it's on the bottom of the earlier page. Minimum front yard under 16.4D, 7.5, and they want to move it to 2.5. So you'd have a 2.5 meter front yard versus a 7.5 meter on a street.
It's got a rear laneway. You don't have it, your driveway's not in the front, so it'd be a little closer to the sidewalk and create more in the back.
I just need to be clear on what the amendment is, because I have the amendment is to remove any reduction in front yard setback requests.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so we want to be clear on what your amendment is. The way we see it now is that you want to remove the minimum setback on the front yard.
I would want to maintain the current minimum front yard.
Maintain the
As a
current
Remove
front
the
yard.
request for variance on the front yard
The way it
setbacks.
currently shows under current, where it's listed on the chart, where it shows current RM1 zone and current R2 zone, it currently shows 7.5 meters for each of the different areas, and some of them are moving down to 2 meters, so.
Can you
rather
just give us
than-
that page again?
Yeah, it's,
I just want to make sure we get this right and we're clear.
starts on page 16 of 23. 16, I think. 15 or 16. 16, yeah, where the chart starts, where the green writing is, green highlight.
The 6.5 current and then proposed for me.
I don't know where it is on the whole agenda package, so. I have a different view than you do, so.
It's more of a maintaining of what the existing current RM1 zone is for that particular item, for that particular front yard item. The rest of them, it's fine.
Okay.
Then we're going to vote on the amendment only. And I'm just going to read this out, and I want you to correct it. So to maintain the minimal front yard,
The director has something she
sorry.
wanted to add.
sorry,
Mr. Chair, through you, they are not asking to amend the rear yard setback of 7.5 meters. So if you're increasing the front yard setback, the rear yard is not being decreased. It's unlikely that this plan will work. And so, this will be going to a board hearing.
and I got a question. So with the rest of the development that's happening around there, is this equal or par with what's going on there right now? Are we creating much of a difference here?
Mr. Chair, as I indicated, these requested changes are very similar to what was requested in Saffron Meadows Phase 1 and 2. Essentially the same.
Actually, the same. Okay. Councilor Han, do you still want to go ahead with your amendment?
I want everyone to seriously consider, if they go to page 15, 16, and 17, and look at the difference between what's listed under current and proposed for the front yards, and see if everyone's comfortable with going down to what is being proposed.
I just want to make sure everybody's clear that if we go through with that, then the whole development will fall through.
I don't believe the entire development will fall through. It's one of those things where I have to say, I've asked about this a number of times, and then I always ask, you know, is this our decision to make? Oh, it's council's decision to make. It's up to council. Council has the final say. Council up to council. Is it? Is it up to council? Because it seems to me like it's not really up to council if then you get faced with almost a threat that it's going to get overturned. So then council really doesn't have much say in the matter anymore, does it? So which is it? Are we just here just as placeholders?
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment? I'm going to read that amendment out one more time so we're clear. And correct me if I'm wrong.
And if somebody wants to make a change, if they want to go split the difference, I mean, make the suggestion.
Well, right now we have one.
Yeah, somebody else can make a
We
motion
have one
here.
motion on the
Like,
floor for one amendment.
There should be some discussion on this. Like, I shouldn't be the only voice saying that this is something that we should look at, you know, but
Does anybody else have anything to say before I bring this? Mayor Junkin.
The truth of the matter is, this council doesn't have a lot of decision.
Hey, we're talking the amendment though right now.
I'm talking about the amendment which is trying to make some changes. We can do whatever we want here. The gentleman who owns this has got Niagara Regional Planning behind him. He no doubt has provincial planning behind him, and he's going to take it to a board. And but we want to defend ourselves. It'll cost us $20,000 or $30,000, and we will lose. That's the decision we have as a council. If you want to push the limits, fine, the system allows us to. But if you're going to try to buck planning that's coming down from the other side of the lake,
Understood.
that's the way it's going to go.
Okay. Any more discussion on this amendment before I put it to vote? Okay, seeing none. So we're going to be voting on the amendment to maintain a minimal front yard for the current R2 zone. Is that correct, Councilor Hahn?
and RM1 zone.
In RM1 zone. Is that correct? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay.
So the amendment is
Is
lost.
lost.
Now you vote on the motion as originally put, because there was no amendment, so you go back to the original motion.
Okay, so now the original motion is put on the floor by Councilor Hildebrand. That the committee receive report CPD-030 2019 for information as it pertains to file numbers 2016-19-02-18, OP-AM-03-18, and AM-04-18 as recommended. That council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix D, amending the official plan policies of the subject property. And that council approve the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix E, amending the zoning of the subject property. and that council approve the draft plan of subdivision attached hereto as Appendix A, subject to the conditions attached hereto as Appendix F. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're gonna move right on here. 4.7. Nobody. Okay, 4.7, motion put on the floor by Councilor Hildebrand that the committee receive report CPD-0028, 2019, and recommend that council not pursue the housing proposal by R. Hummel. Any discussion on this? No, seeing no discussion, I'm going to call it to vote then. All those in favor?
Excuse me, point of clarification. All those in favor of not approving this?
Yeah, correct, just what I read. So that committee receive report CPD-0028, 2019, and recommend that council not pursue the housing proposal by R. Hummel. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, we're on 4.8. Wow, Councilor Hildebrand's been busy. Another motion put on the floor by Councilor Hildebrand that the committee receive report RCW 2019-00016 and recommend that council approve the amendments to the municipal alcohol management policy S100-01 as presented with amendments. Any discussion in regards to this? Councilor Court.
Yes, I just had some concerns about selling alcohol in fire stations. Is any other community in our areas sells or has alcohol in their stations, fire stations? Niagara Falls, St. Catharines?
Fire Chief, can you answer that one?
Sure. For St. Catharines, no, they're all full-time.
No, I'm talking, excuse me, through you, Chair. Are we selling alcohol in the building? Do they have permission to sell alcohol in their,
Yes, they have the proper permits. So.
in their fire stations?
That's
So
right. So when we hold our turkey rolls, we get the proper permission from the liquor license.
No, I'm talking outside of our community. St. Catharines, does any other community allow alcohol, selling of alcohol in their fire
Most do,
stations?
not St. Catharines, but most do, yes. Niagara Falls, Port Erie, Wayne,
Port Colborne.
they get, as long as you have the proper permits and you follow the rules, then they're allowed to. We have some specific rules in Pelham. We're not allowed stag and does. We're not allowed to have anything that potentially could cause higher risk. But for, baby showers, they're required to have third-party insurance. They're required to have their proper liquor permits and follow our rules.
Any other questions in regards to this motion?
One other question.
Yeah, Councilor Court.
Could someone, are we in the alcohol business? So when Thursday nights happen, who owns that alcohol and how is it processed? Do we own the alcohol and we sell it to the residents, or does a third party own it? Or how does that go? To the director.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The town of Pelham, the license, the special occasion permit is in the town of Pelham's name. It is the town of Pelham's responsibility. The alcohol is purchased by the town of Pelham, sold by the town of Pelham. The revenues that are earned are the town of Pelham's, in which it's offset the costs of providing the evening.
So I have a problem with that because we're here to govern, not to raise revenue by selling alcohol. And that's my personal opinion, is that, you know, if we're selling alcohol to offset some of the expenses, then we need to do a better job at controlling cost. And that's my personal view. I don't like alcohol being sold at, on the town's property, or alcohol at all on town property.
I'm just going to clarify that. We can bring that up at a separate time, Council Court. Right now, we have the council to approve the amendments to the municipal alcohol management policy. And in this town, one of the examples would be there's alcohol being used at a fire station, the arena's fully licensed, other things. And I think we're just looking at the highlighted section to see if everybody in this council agrees to that. So Councillor Stewart.
Through you, I was wondering why we need to designate the Pelham Library in Fenwick as being able to serve alcohol. It's such a small venue, I don't see the need for it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is listed as it has a meeting room. You could have a wine and cheese, an opening. If you don't have it listed, it's against our alcohol policy, so that would never happen.
Okay, to the best of your knowledge, do you know if anyone has requested it at that location?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point, it hasn't been requested, although it is a brand-new building, and that's why it's included.
Does that answer everything for you, Councilor Stewart? Yeah. So basically, the way I see it, then, all these, they're on there, but not necessarily being used. It's if somebody wants to rent the room, and they do want to have a wine and cheese, they could go and get a special occasions permit. They would require that, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. You have to have the proper permits. You have to follow the municipal alcohol policy. It's just a policy that guides and leads to positive social activities.
Okay. So one question for you then, when was the last time that this policy, or when was the first time the policy was created, and now that we're updating, how long has it been?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the last time this policy was approved in 2013.
So,
This
okay.
policy, yes.
2013, so we're 6 years, and we're just updating it now,
Correct.
because we have some new facilities.
Just to add to that, we have our regular meetings with our AGCO inspectors, and we reviewed the policy, and definitely it needed to be updated.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Well, then seeing none, so we're going to call this to vote with a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand, that the committee receive report RCW 2019-0016 and recommend that council approve the amendments to the municipal alcohol management policy S100-01 as presented with amendments. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Okay. All right, we're on 5.1. Motion put on the floor by Councillor Wink that the committee receive report number 2019-0054 and recommend that council support an energy assessment grant application through Natural Resources Canada, NRCAN, for the Meridian Community Center. Any discussions on this motion? Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you. I'm sure you knew I was going to say something.
I was hoping you would.
I just want to go over some of the background because the UC committee has been actively involved, or the US committee, it's the USC committee, has been actively involved in it. First of all, the commissioning that was done at the MCC was initiated by Ball Construction. They hired a commissioning company. They came in and did a report. The report was done, but not all the items were ready to be reported on at the time, so there's a lot of open items in the report. The second issue with the report that was done, it does not tie together all the different electrical and mechanical systems. So it's not a complete report in our view. It's still on the outstanding issues list for Ball Construction. But that being said, one of our members of the committee, Dave Cano, who's the Certified Energy Solutions Manager for the town of Oakville, he said the town of Oakville had applied for this grant, and that there was an opportunity for us to have the expenses for a total commissioning report to be completed. The other thing I want to just mention to everyone here is that when I was canvassing, I ran across a commissioning engineer. What I didn't realize till I was in a meeting with Ball Construction, that this commissioning engineer lives in my ward in the town of Pelham. I know exactly where he lives, and he did the work for Ball Construction. So him and I have become friends. So him and I have talked about this, and this is an excellent opportunity. We need this commissioning report to be done. It has to be done one way or another. So this is an opportunity. Apply for the grant. We're believing we're going to get it, and it's going to pay for it. It's still an outstanding item, and we'll let the directors sort out with Ball Construction how this all works out.
Thank you for that and all your work you're doing with that.
Thank you.
With your committee. Mayor Junkin?
Yes, do we know that this grant, will it pay 100%? Or is it a percentage of the assessment, the cost?
The director.
75%?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's 75%, up to 40,000. So for instance, the town would be paying the $10,000 if we were successful.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilor Hildebrand?
Unofficially, this is unofficially, because I'm not even sure whether I'm supposed to be officially doing this, but I just want to comment. Because I've been talking to the commissioning engineer unofficially, I asked him what a cost would be, and it's half the maximum of the grant.
Okay.
If their company was going to do it. Just to give you that's just a ballpark estimate.
Councilor Stewart?
If we were to apply for the grant, would we be able, like you say, there would be money left over, basically. Would we be able to apply that grant to assess some of our other properties to help affect efficiencies?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the grant would be for what you applied for. So we are specifically saying the MCC because of, we're really working hard with our utility costs and our efficiencies, and this is what we need there. If it was council's wish to also do other buildings, we could add to it. That would be council's direction.
Thank you.
Any other comments in regards to this motion on the floor? No, seeing none, then I'm going to call it to vote. So motion put forward by Councilor Wink that the committee receive report number 2019-0054 and recommend that council support an energy assessment grant application through Natural Resources Canada, NRCAN, for the Meridian Community Center. All those in favor? Carried. Here's the one that we've all been waiting for.
That's your favorite. It's your favorite, Mike.
Okay, 5.2. Motion put on the floor by Councilor Kaur that the committee receive report number 2019-0053, Public Works, and recommends that no final policy decision be made until after public feedback is received at the October 15th, 2019 topic-specific public meeting. And the topic is gypsy moth. Any Discussion in regards to this. Mayor Junkin.
Well, I'm just happy that this report came forward from staff. A lot of different ways, I think, to look at this problem. It'll be, opens up the discussion for when we do have that public meeting. And I'm not too sure, somehow or other, I realize we'll hopefully put this up on the website. I'm wondering if when we have that meeting, if we shouldn't print this out and have it on a table so people can take a look at that as they walk into the room. But anyway, yeah, it opens a discussion, and I, for one, I'm looking forward to the meeting of the citizens, and hopefully we will get a solution going forward that satisfies everyone. Thank you.
Councilor Hildebrand.
Yeah, through you, I've been recommending to all of my residents who have been emailing me on the Gypsy Moth that they come and attend and voice their opinion. I said, this is your opportunity. We will all be there. And please, just don't send an email where I can't see you in person. I want to see you in person, and let's talk. Because that's the only way we're going to resolve what we need to do in the future.
Absolutely. I agree. Councilor Hahn.
Through you, Chair, this actually question is for our communications person. Just wondering, as far as advertising for this meeting, you have a schedule of how you're gonna go about that. We're gonna hit the paper like quite a few weeks in advance. So there's nobody that's not gonna know that we're having this public forum.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, we'll get that out well in advance. We'll have it on our website, in the newspapers, our social media channels. Everywhere we can put it, we'll make sure that residents are well aware of when it's happening and any information that they will need to consume prior to the meeting so that they're fully prepared.
So you're gonna run it for 2 weeks in the paper, or?
At least 2 weeks.
At least, okay.
Yeah, and then, like I said, all of our other channels as well.
Thanks. And that'll include both the Welland paper and the Pelham paper?
We can certainly, we've been primarily running them through the Voice of Pelham for the last little while, but if outreach into the Welland paper as well is needed, then absolutely we can look into that for sure.
Councilor Court.
We're not committed to any of these 6, right? We can come up with another alternative.
Absolutely. That's why we're having a public
Just
meeting.
want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're not obligated, or the residents in our community are not obligated to pick one of the 6. So during this meeting, we could come up with another alternative.
I would think so, and I would hope so, and I would feel the same way about that. And yes, and that's why we're having a public meeting.
Okay. I just thought.
Mr. CEO, do you want to correct me if I'm wrong?
I don't think you're wrong at all.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Always a good answer, actually.
Now, just before I call this to vote, there's one thing. I know the Cannabis Control Committee, or Cannabis Public Meeting is next Tuesday at 5:30, and there's some question about the time. A public meeting, I know all our meetings start at 5:30, but is there a possibility of our public meetings starting at 6:30 to give the public an opportunity to attend? Sometimes, like, some are working, and 5:30 is a little early for a public meeting.
So can I make comment on that? We've already advertised the 5:30.
No, for the cannabises, yes, but
Right.
this one hasn't gone out yet. That's why we're on the Gypsy Moss right now, and I want to see before this gets advertised. Yes, Mayor Junkin.
I think that's a hell of an idea. I think we should either 6:30, 7 o'clock.
I think he agreed with me.
Yes, yes. High five.
Yeah, no, so, like, I know it's too late for cannabis, but for Gypsy Moth in October,
I agree.
okay. So then, right now, we're gonna vote on this, but then I'll let staff, make the recommendation that we do the meeting at 6:30 for public meeting.
So, council, staff are always happy to comply, but so that we are abundantly clear, we'll want a motion directly on that point. This calendar year, this council passed a procedural bylaw requiring all public meetings to be at 5:30. So that is why they're at 5:30. You turned your mind to it and decided 5:30 was the appropriate time. Ergo, we're starting them at 5:30. we can start them at any time of day, noon, 9 a.m., 7 p.m.
I see.
Right now, staff are complying with the instruction. So we'll deviate, and we're happy for an entirely new instruction in point of fact. But it should be by vote because as a default, we're going against your wishes overall.
Okay, then I'm gonna make a recommendation while we're on the Gypsy Moth, or a motion, that the meeting for the, public meeting for Gypsy Moth to be held October,
You'll need that motion to come from someone else other than the
okay,
chair.
yeah, so it's gotta come from somebody else. Mayor Junkin?
Yeah. Do we have, and before I mention that, so Madam Clerk, we do have a date that we can have the meeting for?
Yeah.
You, Mr. Chair, the meeting for the Gypsy Moths is scheduled for the 15th, and the location is at the community center in the Kinsman Room, the full Kinsman Room.
Okay, so therefore I will need, put forward the motion for the meeting of the Gypsy Moths, October the 15th, to commence at 6:30.
Councilor Wink?
Is the Kinsman room gonna be sufficient in size?
Wait,
It holds 60 people.
Shouldn't it be the Kersey room?
oh, I thought we were gonna have it in the big
Sewer's not
room.
available. That's the Kersey room.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree with Councilor Wink. I don't think a Kinsman room.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Kinsman Room is the room available on Tuesday nights are difficult to find meeting rooms in Pelham. That was the date most desired. The Kersey Room is booked. The fire halls are booked. Old Pelham Town Hall is booked. We could look for an off-site that is not owned by the municipality if that's council's preference, or change the date.
We gotta change the date, honestly. We're gonna get a lot more than 60 people out. And then one thing we don't wanna have is people in the hallway.
The only thing I'm concerned about is pushing it too far, because this is gonna allow to hear from the public going into the budget.
Yeah. Well,
And we
like I
need to
said-
know where we're going into the budget.
Yeah. Well, 60.
I didn't have the availability from council for other dates that were offered on that poll. So I can re-poll council if that's the direction, but I will need direction to do that.
This goes to the Director of Recreation. Can whatever's going on in the Kersey Room be switched to the Kinsman Room?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking.
Okay, if that can be switched, then it solves our problem.
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, no. Not that night. It is the big band night, which,
Okay. Well, I find it hard to believe that a week either way is gonna make a lot of difference. Whereas 60 is gonna make a lot of difference.
No, we can't have them in the hallways. Fire chief wouldn't approve of that.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah, Director, Public Works.
Sure, Mr. Chair. I was on holidays, but this is the first time when I saw the actual meeting date this morning. So one thing I did speak to my manager about that you need to be aware of is that what's going to be important is that, it was said before, we go through a competitive process and have an RFP. And it would be definitely a benefit if we have a consultant on board that's going to be administering our program to be present at that meeting. That would be staff's preference. So we have to put together an RFP and get that, go through the procurement process, get a consultant on board, and then we would have that consultant prepare materials for that meeting. That would be what staff would how we want to go. So if we do change the date from the 15th, I'm requesting that we don't move it up. Because by the time we go through the RFP and the procurement process, it will take probably a month's worth of time to get somebody on board.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yep,
so through you, Mr. Chair, my only concern is we can't delay it too long because it will have a budget impact. So we're trying to meet the budget timelines of getting the operating and capital budgets approved before Christmas. And so we just can't delay it too long.
Okay, Counselor Stewart?
Through you, would the meeting necessarily have to be on a Tuesday night?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, that was just the one that was available for the majority of respondents. to the poll.
You got something?
Wednesday?
So perhaps if we ask the Director of Recreation, can you see anything opening up, or are you guys doing too good a job booking that building?
Well, you could try the Wednesday. We can move around things on the Wednesday, but
Why, what's the Wednesday?
Yeah, the Wednesday, we can make it
So if
work.
council is available the Wednesday, we could switch it to the Wednesday, but I was going by the doodle poll. So,
Understood. Can we decide that right now, if council's available on the Wednesday?
Yeah?
Counselor Hahn?
I wasn't going to be, but I'm gonna have to move some things around, so,
Is that a yes?
yeah, I'll have to work at that.
Counselor Court?
What date are we talking, November?
No, October.
October 16th.
You're in Europe.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'll be away.
So you wouldn't be here the Tuesday anyways. Tuesday's even worse for you.
Right. So I don't know. Right, at this stage, I don't know. I'll get back to Nancy later on tonight or first thing tomorrow morning.
So it looks like we have quorum.
Yeah.
Well, I want,
Your director has something.
yep, sorry.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, just to let council know that on October 16th, there is a public meeting being held at Fire Station 1. It is the region carrying out a public meeting for replacement of their water tank, which will be a fairly contentious issue, I think, with some of the residents in Pelham, and we won't want to double book an EA on this, or a public meeting on the same night.
Thank you. Well, then that wipes out the Wednesday.
What about the 23rd, the following Wednesday?
Would October 23rd work for this council? Counselor Corr, you okay? Counselor Hahn?
Yes.
How's that look? How's
Mayor
that look?
Junkin? The 22nd, how about the
We've got a
22nd?
short-term rental meeting on the 22nd.
Okay, so the 23rd. We'll just make sure that Director of Recreation is available the 23rd?
yeah, we can do it. We can move around things.
Yeah. So this side's good for the 23rd, this side? Looks like October 23rd it is.
Okay.
So you can make your motion.
Okay, put a motion, October 23rd at 6:30 PM at the Kersey Room at the MCC.
Yep. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we're going to vote on the motion that's on the floor by Councillor Corr, that the committee,
Call for an amendment to that date.
yeah, that the committee receive report number 2019-0053, Public Works, and recommends that no final policy decision be made until after the public feedback is received at the amended October 23rd, 2019, topic-specific public meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, we got a motion on the floor by Councillor Hahn that the committee receive report number 2019-0050 and recommend that council approve the alcohol, cannabis, and illicit drugs in the workplace policy P100-02 as amended. Any discussion in regards to this motion? Councillor Hahn?
Yeah, just in other workplaces I've been at, when it refers to other types of things that could impair an individual, usually they use the term fit for duty. I noticed we didn't use the word fit for duty in ours. I think that would be something that would be advantageous to add, but I would refer to our legal counsel for that, or our CAO. Sorry, bud.
We'll be if you want to approve this in principle, with allowance for us to make some changes in nomenclature, we'd be most pleased.
Okay. Any other discussion in regards to this? No, seeing none, then I'll call the motion that's put on the floor by Councillor Hahn that the committee receive report number 201-90050 and recommend that council approve the alcohol, cannabis, and illicit drugs in the workplace policy P100-02 as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Motion on the floor by Councillor Hildebrand that the committee receive report number 2019-0057 and recommend that council approve the medical cannabis accommodation policy. Any discussion in regards to this? Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Chair. So similar to my earlier comment, I would also add the addition of fit for duty into this as well. So we, again, for the suggestion of our CEO, we could approve this in theory, I guess, but I think it should be amended at a later date and, again, alter some of the jargon that we've used.
Staff will only make grammatical and title changes. No substance will be changed from what council approves.
Everybody clear on that? Any more discussion or comments? Seeing none, I call it the vote. Motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that the committee receive report 2019-0057 and recommend that council approve the medical cannabis accommodation policy. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're almost there. Okay, motion put on the floor by Councillor Wink that the committee receive report 2019-008, clerks, establishment of a flag policy, and that the committee recommend that council approve the following recommendations. That staff be directed to include the purchase of 2 additional flagpoles for installation at the Town of Pelham Municipal Building, 20 Pelham Town Square in 2020 facilities budget, and that if the budget approval is obtained, the 3rd ranking flagpole be designated as a community flagpole, and that the flag policy as appended to this report be recommended to council for approval, and that the policy clerk 14 flag lowering at the municipal building be repealed and replaced, and that the flag raising requests be suspended until such time as a community flagpole is in place. Any discussions in regards to this? Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Chair, just so I'm crystal clear, this is the flagpoles in the front of our building, not the rear of our building, correct?
Correct.
Excellent, thanks.
Any other discussion in regards to this? Mayor Junkin.
So, I'm sort of disappointed, not disappointed, whatever, that perhaps we should have, there should be another option, and that is, as in our neighbor to the west of us, West Lincoln, they just have one flagpole, it's for the Canadian flag, and their policy is no other flags fly on town land. So I'm just wondering if this council would entertain that choice. I have nothing against this, but don't get me wrong, but we do have 2 flags, and one at the back, one at the front, and if we didn't want to do the expense of putting up another 2 flagpoles, it's well within our jurisdiction to say, no, we're happy with the flags we got. We're having a new flag policy, which is Canadian flag only. Now, is that being an open, diverse community? Probably not. So let's, I'm just opening it up as for a discussion, and no one wants to discuss it, that's fine too. But it is an option.
Yeah, that's an option. So, anything? Councillor Hahn? Councillor Hildebrand?
I agree with the mayor. When you give people a lot of options, we end up with a lot of choices for people. And there probably are more flags out there than we don't know what to do with. I like the fact that we have Canadian flag, let the flag be flown and let that be the only flag. It's our country's flag, it works for me. I personally, being an engineer, you know, I'm hard and fast, so you have one flag, one choice. I don't have to concern myself with the options.
Understood. Anybody else? Mayor Junkin?
Having said that,
Oh, no.
make no mistake about it, when that opportunity comes next year, and that same organization wants us to fly the flag, and we say, sorry, we've changed our flag policy, we will be opening ourselves up to criticism. So we have to be aware of that also. But to tell you the honest truth, I don't know where I stand. After that, I'll take it off.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the alternatives reviewed as noted in the report, council could direct staff to prepare a policy that does not permit flag raising of any community flags representing organizations, events, or causes to be displayed on municipal property and continue with a single flagpole displaying the national flag only. So if that was presented as an amendment to strike the recommendation and replace it with that alternative as listed in the report, then council could vote on that. If that passes, that becomes the recommendation that goes to council. And if it fails, then committee is back to the recommendation as presented in the report. I'm just giving that advice procedurally through you, Mr. Chair.
Fire Chief?
Mr. Chair, we have more than one flagpole at the fire station. We fly the Canadian and the provincial. So if you, I'm not opposed, if you guys want to just have Canadian, then we're going to have to remove flagpoles.
You could specify town hall.
Yeah, we can specify town hall then. Any other, Councilor Wink?
So just a question, how often do we get requests for additional flags? Like, do we get flags for United Way? How often during the course of the year are we being asked to fly other flags?
Can anybody answer that one for us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we get regular requests from, for example, Seniors Month, United Way. We do get various requests. It's not a great number of requests, but we do get them regularly.
Do we honor those requests?
We have in the past.
All of them?
Well, unless they would offend what is outlined in the report.
Okay.
So, for example, it couldn't be for a religious organization or for one that is contrary to human rights codes and what is outlined in the policy.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions before I call this the vote? So just to make it clear, then I'm going to call and vote as what's presented in front of us, or the alternative route.
I don't have a motion, an amendment.
Okay, so there is no amendment, so we're going to call this. Yep, Councilor.
I'll make an amendment to the motion, calling for the one single flag policy.
Okay. Any discussion on that amendment? Yeah, Mr. CO.
At a bare minimum, if council prefers the minimalist approach, would it consider then allowing at least the Canadian and Ontario flags? Virtually all of our grants come from the province of Ontario. We just hosted the premier. It's entirely appropriate that at a minimum we both recognize the country and the province. The federal government provides us with virtually no funding, I might add, not that everything comes back to money, but as base tact and diplomacy and intergovernmental relations are some component of my job. I feel it appropriate to mention that. So at a minimum, I think the fire departments have that right. And I don't know if we, sorry, I'm too new to know if we have a town flag. Then there cannot be a more appropriate place than town hall to fly the town flag. And that rule would actually prohibit us from flying our own flag, I point out.
Counselor Wink.
So from my perspective, like, we are part of a community, we support community, whether it's United Way and what's at issue is this one particular flag. However, you know, these people are still part of our community, and times are changing a little bit. So I think we've got to be a little inclusive and a little more supportive of these initiatives. I like the fact that, and we ran into this problem or this situation this past year. I like the solution that the clerk has presented to us. So from my perspective, that's the way I would support it.
Forget about your motion, Counselor?
Yeah, threw it away.
Hildebrand? Now, how about if we skip the purchasing of the other additional poles, and if we have any other community flags that want to be flown, can we put them up at the fire hall on the second pole there and lower the Ontario one and always fly the Canadian one?
The flag etiquette, your first pole to the left is your Canadian flag, your middle pole is your provincial flag, and you opt for a third pole, which is your, but you can't fly two flags in one pole. There's some very
Understood.
definite etiquette to it, so.
Canadian provincial. Canadian's in the center.
There are Canadian
Poles at the
center,
fire station.
provincial left, and whatever. There's a definite thing, and then you have a third pole where you can have your accessory flags or your whatever. Yep.
Can we skip the expense of 2 additional poles and put an extra one up at the fire hall?
Clerk can speak to it better. I think the concerns were more for town hall. I don't receive any complaints about our flag etiquette at the fire halls, so.
Okay. Any more discussion? I'm going to bring this to vote then. So a motion on the,
Excuse me, Chair,
Yep.
so we're voting on 3 flag poles in front of the city hall. That's
Yeah,
what
I'm gonna-
we're voting for now.
read it out, yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah. So a motion put on the floor by Councillor Wink that the committee receive report 2019-0008-clerks-establishment of a flag policy, and that the committee recommend that council approve the following recommendations. That staff be directed to include the purchase of 2 additional flagpoles for installation at the Town of Pelham Municipal Building, 20 Pelham Town Square, in the 2020 facilities budget, in that if the budget approval is obtained, the third ranking flagpole be designated as a community flagpole, and that the flag policy as appended to this report be recommended to council for approval, and that the policy clerk 14 flag lowering at the municipal building be repelled and replaced, and that the flag raising requests be suspended until such time as a community flagpole is in place. Is that clear? Okay, so all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Oh, the last sheet. Motion put on the floor by Councillor Stewart that this regular meeting of the committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for September 16, 2019, following council. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for bearing with us.